Did you hear the words to that song, You Are Beautiful? Can you say that to a neighbor? You are beautiful. And then can you put your hands on your heart and say that to yourself with your eyes closed for a moment and just say, you are beautiful. And now just be in that space. There may have been part of it when someone said it to you or when you said it to yourself, that there was a little voice or a little nudge that said, I don't believe that, or that's not true. Or there may have been a part that just said, yeah. But that idea that we are beautiful in every single way is a basic principle of unity. It's a principle that reminds us that we are beautiful because we are born from pure beauty. In fact, we are born from the very nature of that pureness itself. So it is impossible, no matter what happens in life, no matter what it looks like, no matter how we are, not to be one with that beauty. And it would be nice if, as the song says, words can't bring me down. It'd be nice, right, if we all lived that reality from day to day. But the interesting piece of the human condition is that we have thoughts, we have emotions, we have things based on experiences and belief systems. And those things certainly can bring us down, can they not? They can be a nice, fun trick or treat, waking up to them every day and going to sleep with them every night. You never know what you're going to get when you knock on that door sometimes, and sometimes we can be surprised by our own experiences, even if we've done a lot of what we call our spiritual work, and we feel like fear is behind us. Why is it so hard to let go of fear and let go of limiting beliefs, even when we know what they're about? We know that they constrict us. There are some theories about the human condition and the spiritual state being that pure, infinite state that has no opposite, state that is unchangeable, and that this human experience is the one that we live in the world of the changeable. We live in the world of illusion. We live in the world of duality, and that, in fact, sometimes creates that consciousness, that push and that pull, that we fall asleep, that we can become down. Now, I can't give you an answer to that because I haven't been to that other state and been back here consciously. Some people may have. But I haven't. So I like to think rather in whys, I like to start to think in whats, because there are a lot of different theories on what this is about. Some people say it's a playground, but it's really hard to be with people in that space of that it's a playground when we're down, or when we're trapped in fear, or when we're stuck with those limiting thoughts and have difficulty changing them. Some say we fell asleep, and it's about waking up. Rather than even looking at answering those questions today, let's look at what we can do with it and what can we do when we understand the nature of fear. There's an unknown quote I want to share with you. Within the mystery of life, there is infinite darkness of the night sky lit by distant orbs of fire, then cobbled skin of an orange that releases its fragrance to our touch. The unfathomable depth of the eyes of our lover. No creation story, no religious system can fully describe or explain this richness and depth. Mystery is so everywhere present that no one can know for certain what will happen 1 hour from now. That mystery is so rich and deep that no one will know for certain what will happen 1 hour from now. To some aspects of our consciousness, that is this absolute beautiful dance in mystery that creates awe and reverence. And then there's an aspect of our consciousness in which that is terrifying, is it not? That is scary. It's scary to the part that is seeking that unchangeable nature, seeking to be safe, seeking to be free from fear. Fears we have of loss, fears we have of the future, of death, of life, of speaking, of changing. There isn't really a lot of people, I could say, and you could probably say, that live without any fear. Even if we consider ourselves to be a fearless person. Not that there aren't any, but there probably are very few. We've got some that are going, yeah, that's me. We'll all go to spiritual counseling there after the service. But really, there are some masters that have mastered that. And for many of us, it is part of this human condition. But we are only captive by it if we don't understand it. We live in a world that we get to recreate ourselves and recreate our lives moment to moment. The other way to look at it is that we are in a state of consciousness that we have to recreate ourselves and recreate our life in every moment. Again, that can either bring up awe and mystery, or it can bring up fear. So what happens if we start to understand the nature of fear and use it? So rather than live under it, live with it, but use it, dedicate it to something. There's a fine line, if you've ever noticed, between fear and excitement. A fine line between fear and excitement. In fact, even in the Bible, where it says, fear of the Lord, fear of God, the other interpretation of that is, in fact, awe. Awe. Amazed, drop everything, unspeakable, words can't contain it, awe. They're both energy. And in this human experience, that energy, before it is processed through thought, is simply fuel. It's simply energy. When it is attached and tethered to ideas that constrict, ideas of limitation, ideas of lack or self-worth that is diminished, then it becomes trembling fear. But if we can take all of those beliefs off, then we can be in that energy, and we have the option of recognizing it as something different and really checking in. How many times when you feel afraid of something in your life, do you sit there, stop, feel the feeling, just say, I feel this in my body. Is this really fear? A lot of times I would argue that it's actually excitement. It's excitement that's turned upside down by limited beliefs. Thoughts that we might fail, thoughts that we might not make it, thoughts that something else that came from either our inherited patterns or our educational system or words people said that brought us down are somehow jumping on that energy and carving it into somewhat of a pumpkin of fear, rather than balloons of celebration that just get released and lifted off. If we can learn to understand it, we can have an entire different experience. Now, there are some types of fear that are very natural, that are very useful, in that if we don't have them, well, that's not a good thing because they're actually there to keep us alive. Like if you're hiking and you see a bear, then fear might be a little bit useful. If you're diving and you see a shark, now we'll talk about that one in a second. There's a little story by that Reverend Chris Chenoweth tells, our beloved Reverend Chris Chenoweth. He tells this little story. I'm going to share it with you. An elementary school teacher in California was trying to help her children deal with their fears after a big earthquake. She had them draw pictures portraying their impressions or feelings. Most showed scenes of destruction, but one youngster's picture was puzzling. It showed pointed objects sticking up above blue water. Asked to explain, the little girl said, "Oh, those are aftershocks. When you are afraid, the water is filled with aftershocks." The type of fear that is that initial fear, that bodily, that carnal, the same fear that animals feel that makes them run in a different direction to safety. That's the fear that can be useful just to keep our physical bodies safe. But it's those other fear, it's those aftershocks that are the ones that are not useful, that actually can take us down. And then in fact are optional. Are you ready to let your aftershocks be optional? I have done some scuba diving. I lived in Australia for a short period of time, and I got to scuba dive on the Great Barrier Reef there. And talk about the difference between fear and excitement. And tuning into that, if you can just visualize for me, some of you might not want to even do this because it might bring up too much excitement. Going on night dives, putting on your scuba gear and jumping into just a black pool of water in the dark, and going around. And if you've ever, yes, some people are getting uncomfortable like me. I think I got to go to the restroom now. But going in, and if you haven't done it, it's an amazing experience of presencing yourself in your own fears, because you are absolutely powerless in that moment. You are absolutely out of your element. You can't take off your mask and go, wait, come back, to anyone else. There's nothing you can do. They do teach you some little tricks, though. They teach you, pounding on your hand, because you can hear that in water. So if you pound on your hand, you can get people's attention. So one of my experiences with fear was this. I was told before we got in the water that sharks can sense your fear. So what can happen is that when you're in the water and they sense that vibration, because they're very sensitive, right? It's like they can hear fears we can't hear. Kind of like sometimes the metaphysical universe, we can be putting things out and we can't even hear it, but there is an imprint that happens because it's heard. So they can feel that sound. So as you get more scared, they can actually pick up on where you are more easily. Now, I'm not saying this in any sort of scientific way, but my experience was this. I was in the water. People are all excited and going, this means shark. People are so excited. Shark, shark, woohoo, let's go look at it, right? And I immediately kind of saw the direction, looked enough to look. Everyone else is swimming towards it. Started to go away and feeling my heart and then listening to my heart and feeling my heart upon listening to my heart and feeling it beat faster and faster and then remembering, no, it's got to go slower. It has to go slower. If it doesn't go slower, that's like me saying, come on over, come on over. So it was an amazing experience of presencing fear. Now, I was both excited and afraid. But I had in that moment, right, master myself so that I was clear about what I was putting out and what I was calling to me. Do we not all have the same charge with our own spiritual lives when we live in a listening universe? There's a story in sacred scripture that can tell a tale as well. It's kind of the first conversations with God. And I'm not going to go into the whole story, but it's the story of Job, the book of Job, and you may know it. And a lot of times the book of Job is really focused on as being a book to answer the questions of why on human suffering, why do humans suffer, why do bad things happen to good people? But there's a little more to the story, and I remember the first time I really got this, I was amazed. I was in awe. There's some little lines that we don't always pull out of the story about Job because, see, Job was a righteous man. Job was a good man. Job did so much that was good and right. But when we can take a metaphysical lens and look at this story, there's something else going on that makes more to a story than a really good guy that did everything right and still life is so hard. Job had 10 children, 3 daughters and 7 sons. We can think metaphysically of those sons as being the thinking nature, the offspring of Job, that are the thinking nature aspects of Job. And then he had 3 daughters, which we can think of as being the feeling nature of Job. Now, if you just breeze through the story, you might not get this. But there's a couple of things in here. The number 7 signifies completion or perfection. It's often called God's number. And it's also a creative. So we're talking about this thinking nature, and we're talking about being God's number. And then the daughters, the 3 daughters can represent that emotional nature or the feelings that we press out, that we know when we put thinking and feeling together, that's creative. Those are our creative faculties. So that feeling nature, the daughters represent mind, idea, expression. So what we're seeing is that Job has offspring, has putting out of what is mind, idea, expression, this creative process, and these 7 sons, which is God's number in the thinking nature, okay? If you catch this one little part, It goes like this when we're asking, like, what is this going on? And we're trying to answer the question, or people tend to take this as it being an answer to the question of why do people suffer. But I would pose that it's about something entirely different. And it's about this little part. Are you ready for it? Do you have any excitement about that? It's this little key that kind of changes what this story could be about for us. What if this story is just about fear? What if it's not about answering those questions and it's about fear? There is a part where we learn that Job is constantly fearing. Constantly fearing. We find nothing else wrong. And in fact, this isn't even pointed out as being a problem in the passage. But Job is constantly fearing that his sons may have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. So he's constantly in fear of his thoughts. He's constantly in fear of his thinking nature, not necessarily calling it his own, but his sons. So he's constantly offering up offerings to make amends for that. Kind of like the shark in the water, right? And then one of the sad things that happens along the way is that all of his possessions get wiped out from under him and destroyed, and also the killing of Job's 10 children. Now that sounds really bad if you're taking this as just being a story to teach something that is real, right? This real story. But if you think about those 7 sons and those 3 daughters as being the offspring that led to something that was based in fear, and then you see that when that is wiped clean, what happens to Job? Everything is restored. And he gets something about alignment and consciousness. He gets something about a shark in the water and his use of that principle or fear. Now, and maybe he didn't get it or not, but either way, because we've got this story, we can get it. The passage ends like this. After Job lived 140 years and saw his children, because everything was restored, his children and his children's children, 4 generations. So you see, he's got now generation after generation of great, fearless energy. Job died, old and full of days. Happy ending to the story. What can happen for us if we transform our fears? There's an article in Newsweek. Has anyone seen this? It's a recent Newsweek. And it says, heaven is real. You know why? Because a doctor, a neurosurgeon, went there and came back to tell about it. Had a near-death experience. And this neurosurgeon was clear that the parts of his cortex, the parts of his being that would generate consciousness enough to have an experience after life, scientifically he knew that was impossible to have the experiences that he had when he was not in his conscious state. And he got a message when he was there, a beautiful message of unity. He got this message and he said, before my experience, these ideas were abstractions. Today they are realities. Not only is the universe defined by unity, it is also, I now know, defined by love. He also said that he got this message while he was here, the message, you have nothing to fear. There is nothing wrong you can do. And he said that that message flooded him with such an amazing sense of peace, calm, and assurance that he is actually dedicating his life to showing that truth in science and to having conversations with people. Yeah, amen? Having conversations with people about the greatness and the goodness and the light of God. That we, in fact, have nothing to fear. That fear is just part of the human condition and the human experience. It can be here to be used, and other than that, it's okay to let it go. Dilgo Rinpoche said, mind creates both entanglements of the world and the freedom from them. Once we recognize that thoughts are empty, the mind will no longer have the power to deceive us. But as long as we take our deluded thoughts as real, they will continue to torment us mercilessly. This idea of transforming fear is also explained by our Unity friend, Scott Grace, like this. Let's bring down the house lights. Oh, fear. I'm so scared it's not going to get up and running. Not really. Cancel, cancel. I don't think I could do it as well as he does, but I have faith in our team up there. Keep talking. I was just thinking not. I could play it for you on my iPhone. Oh, I wish I could just tell you what he said, but you can't put it into words. The idea of stopping to take a moment to breathe into whatever energy is in us when we think we have fear is a pivotal moment in transforming our consciousness and a pivotal moment in working the law. Because the law is not such that energy is to be used against us. The law is such that God is energy, and energy is pure, and it is always for our betterment. It is always for good. It is simply, whatever we want to call it, if we want to call it jumping into that sleeping state, if we want to call it entering the world of duality, if we want to call it sleeping or waking up in the Garden of Eden and recognizing, what's going on? It's that idea that what I put on top of that energy, what I funnel that energy through, how I utilize it, will either free me or destroy me. Are we good yet? Oh, this is so good. I really want you to hear it. Yeah, I could use my iPad and we could all squint. Let's do this. Let's take a moment. So everyone just take a deep breath in and gently close your eyes. And allow yourself to just enter into a state of knowing that we are spiritual beings in human bodies experiencing a human condition. And that the idea of fear can be a very normal part of that condition. But we are here, you are here, not to be normal. You are right where you are by divine appointment because you have chosen to be awake. So right here and right now, we let this prayer enter into every cell. We invite it, in fact, into every cell, every thought, and every emotion, so that this knowing has its way within our beings. Let these words be your words. I have the potential to become more than any present human fear. In order to do so, though, I must empty myself. Therefore, in this moment, I am here to empty myself. I am emptying myself now of all fear inside of me. I am emptying myself of all fear that I may have inherited knowingly or unknowingly. I am consciously and powerfully entering into a state of consciousness that understands energy, that understands the difference between awe and fear, and how to use my God-given birthrights. I am emptied of any fears that were educated into me. I am empty of any fears that the world around me may share, that may look so real to my eyes, but be unknown to the power of my spirit. I am empty now. I am spiritually cleaned out, refreshed, renewed, revitalized, and regenerated by infinite light and wisdom. And so it is. Amen. Are we going to have to check this out on YouTube later? Is that the story? We can't play it when the kids get in and they're here. So this is what we'll do. We'll see if we can't maybe have it for next Sunday. And this will get everybody, this will be another practice in breaking through any fears. If anyone who has fears of getting on Facebook or online, we'll put it on our YouTube and we'll put it on our Facebook. And I double dog dare you to get on and watch it. All right? Namaste.